So I've been waiting for this. Sorry.
As the mandatory minicamps are happening right now and new guys are getting used to their new homes, Kansas City is still looking like the top dogs of the AFC as they received their Super Bowl rings this last week. But they'll have to get through a tough AFC West that's looking to produce some more contenders behind some new leadership this upcoming season. So, let's talk about it. The Los Angeles Chargers are such an interesting team in the NFL as they seem to always have the talent to win and the roster to win every single year, but seem to never end up winning with Justin Herbert, despite of how great of a quarterback he is for that franchise entering a contract year for Herbert. Last year, Justin threw for over 4,700 passing yards with 25 touchdowns and 10 interceptions, which many could say that it was a down year for him statistically, as he did throw 38 touchdowns the previous season. But they did end up making the playoffs for the first time in Herbert's career, to then blow a massive lead in the wildcard game against the Jacksonville Jaguars, with quarterback Trevor Lawrence ending their season with a 3-touchdown performance in the second half. That was so amazing. And with that heartbreaking loss during the playoffs, the Chargers are back on the saddle trying to get themselves back into playoff contention, which is why it's so important to bringing back pieces like running back Austin Eckler, who's been a scoring machine for that offense, scoring 38 total touchdowns in the last 2 seasons. Not only is he a massive piece in the running game, but he can also line up wide as a wide receiver or even catch passes from the backfield, which is probably why Herbert had a terrible 6.8 yards per pass last season, was because that offense relied so much on Austin Eckler. Though with Eckler coming back to the Chargers offense for one more season under his contract, the offense is still looking very explosive with Keenan Allen and Mike Williams out wide. Allen having 752 yards and 4 touchdowns last year while only playing 10 games during the season. The Chargers drafted wide receiver Quentin Johnson out of TCU to hopefully spread the field even more for Herbert to start throwing bombs to his receivers. Johnson and TCU had over 1,000 yards receiving and had 6 touchdowns during his senior year, bringing the ability to not only outrun defenders but also moss them if need be. Defensively, the Chargers still have that 1-2 punch with Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack. And with Bosa being healthy and ready by week 1 this time, that D-line is still a top group in the league, including pieces like Max Morgan and Sebastian Joseph Day, as well as that secondary unit led by all-pro safety Derwin James still being that hard-hitting, ball-hawking safety, alongside them replacing Kyle Van Noy with former Minnesota Viking and Pro Bowler Eric Kendricks, who had 137 tackles last season. Overall, I think the LA Chargers this upcoming season are going to do very well as a team, especially on offense with Keenan Allen coming back for a full season, so Justin Herbert can rely on him more in those big moments and those big games that matter down the season, instead of having to rely on Austin Eckler throughout the entire game. And on top of that, I feel like Justin Herbert is going to have a similar season to the 2021 season where he did throw for 38 touchdowns. March 8th, 2022. I can remember like it's yesterday. I was chilling in my room, minding my own business, watching the Pat McAfee show, when all of a sudden, Pat looks at his phone and says,
"Oh, really?
Blockbuster. After weeks of negotiations in one of the largest trades in NFL history, the Seattle Seahawks and Denver Broncos have agreed to terms on a deal involving Super Bowl winning quarterback Russell Wilson. The trade is pending a physical and Wilson's approval."
And since that time, since that day, I've experienced what seemed like a few waves of emotions as a Seahawks fan towards this whole situation. At first, it was more of a hatred towards the Seattle Seahawks organization for giving away our greatest player of all time for essentially picks, because at the time I didn't think the trade was that good at all. And then once the season started going, I started feeling a sense of joy when Russell Wilson wasn't playing like he was when he was with us. And then you see Seattle doing so well without Russell Wilson. And then now, I feel like this upcoming season, I've accepted the fact that Russell Wilson is gone, and I've moved on as a Seahawks fan, and I'm just hoping for the best for both sides at this point. And besides, Denver has a lot on their own plate at the moment, as Russell Wilson's playing career in Denver is definitely in jeopardy, especially after last season when he wasn't playing near to the same level that he was when he was wearing that nice neon green and navy blue. Especially when there was so much hype surrounding that Denver Broncos team as soon as he got traded to them to be a Super Bowl contender.
That can win you some games even though you may not be playing at your highest level. You have a shot when you get into the playoffs. Fully expect Denver to be in the playoffs.
He ended up passing for career lows in touchdowns with 16, a completion percentage of only 60%, and an average pass of 6.9 yards. It just seemed Russell Wilson did not have the same magic coming into Denver like he had in Seattle. He had teammates yelling at him and shit, basically saying, why the hell are you playing like the worst player when you're paid the most on this damn team? And this season, if he plays like that again, Sean Payton isn't going to be the one to be fired from Denver this time around. And even if that doesn't work out, they always have former XFL passing yards king Ben DiNucci. Other than the quarterback spot, the offense looks relatively decent despite having a missing running back spot. They still have a good wide receiver duo with Courtland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy, where they both had over 800 receiving yards last season. They signed tight end Tyler Manhertz to help replace Noah Fant as he was a part of that Russell Wilson trade. The O-line is still not looking great because Russ still ended up being sacked the most 55 times last season, which isn't much of a difference from when he played in Seattle. The Broncos this upcoming season are looking like a team that's definitely going to improve. I don't see Russell Wilson having another terrible year like that. He's never had a back-to-back bad season, so I'm hoping that he does improve. It's not like I'm hoping him to have a bad season at all, but I don't see the Broncos winning that many games, especially with the offense is still lacking in some pieces, same as the defensive side, with losing pieces like Bradley Chubb last season. With a new face of the franchise for the city of Las Vegas in porn star Jimmy Garoppolo, the Raiders are trying to get back into relevancy in the NFL, starting with them giving the boot to Derek Carr and bringing in former NFC champion Jimmy G, a self-proven quarterback who's had plenty of success in San Francisco recently under Kyle Shanahan's offense. Last season, Jimmy could have had his best season yet, as only 10 games in, he threw for 2,437 passing yards, 16 touchdowns, and only 4 interceptions before having a season-ending injury that ended up putting Brock Purdy in. Having Jimmy coming back into Josh McDaniels' offense in Vegas is going to be super easy for Jimmy to learn the playbook and terminology, especially since the last time they were together was back in New England when Tom Brady was still there. Though the big news surrounding the Las Vegas Raiders this offseason was not only the loss of their longtime quarterback Derek Carr, but also the loss of their former All-Pro tight end Darren Waller, as they traded him to the New York Giants after injuries seemed to plague his play on the field the last 2 seasons. But what was wild was the fact that the Raiders traded him just before his wedding day to his wife, who plays for the Vegas Aces, the WNBA squad. While losing the production from Waller, you still have major pieces like All-Pro wide receiver Devontae Adams, who they got last offseason from Green Bay, Hunter Renfrow, and running back Josh Jacobs, who had a career-high 1,653 rushing yards with 12 touchdowns, along with the newly acquired tight ends Austin Hooper and O.J. Howard, alongside wide receiver Jacoby Myers, who was the #1 receiver for New England for the last 3 seasons. I do hope the Raiders do end up extending Jacobs, as he has been a bowling ball for that running back room for them, and he's playing under a franchise tag this upcoming season. The Raiders are still lacking mainly on the defensive side, which was 26th last year in points, with them not losing much and not gaining anything either to help support Max Crosby or Chandler Jones on the D-line, as they're the only 2 things stopping really anything. Jones, who's had 15 sacks in the last 2 seasons, trying to get back to his 2019 self when he was leading the league in sacks, and Max Crosby, who had 12.5 sacks last season and 22 tackles for loss, which was a career high for him. All in all, the Raiders are going to be a decent team that's going to have to rely on their offense to keep up with the scoreboard against teams like Kansas City, LA, Buffalo, Cincy, and others. This might not work or look that good the first season, but with some more adjustments defensively, they will look more like a contender in the future. Which leaves us with a team that won the Super Bowl last season, led by, I'm just going to let everyone know, the best quarterback in the NFL, and probably is going to be the greatest quarterback of all time when it's all said and done, and he's far gone from the league. Patty Mahomes last season not only won the MVP, the Super Bowl, but he also won the Super Bowl MVP as they had a hellacious game against the Philadelphia Eagles. All is rightfully deserved as he threw for 5,250 yards and 41 touchdowns, throwing mainly to his number one target in possibly the GOAT of tight ends with Travis Kelce, catching for 110 passes for 1,338 yards and 12 touchdowns. Over the last couple of seasons, those two players, Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, have been probably the best quarterback tight end duo since Tom Brady and Gronk when they were back in New England. Alongside Kelce, Kansas City also had a young wide receiver they traded for from the New York Giants, who I think is going to go off this season with Patrick Mahomes. Wide receiver Kadarius Toney, as soon as he came onto the scene in Kansas City, they saw his freakish potential to outrun almost any defender like Tyreek Hill did for that offense previously. Last year in 7 games, he recorded 19 touches for 230 total yards and 3 total touchdowns, as he showed the ability to go and catch the ball, but also rush on a trick play if need be. The Chiefs offense was able to also run the ball pretty effectively with rookie running back Isaiah Pacheco, as he bursted through the scene, recording 830 rushing yards and 5 touchdowns, leading the Chiefs running back room in both stats. And when we're talking defensively, you can't forget to bring up defensive tackle Chris Jones into the conversation, as he could have won Defensive Player of the Year last year if it wasn't for Nick Bosa and Micah Parsons. Chris Jones last season had 15.5 sacks, which tied his career high back in 2018, as well as getting 17 tackles for losses and being first-team All-Pro this season. This offseason, though, the Kansas City Chiefs lost a couple key pieces like Juju Smith-Schuster, who led Kansas City in yards for their receivers. They also lost Frank Clark, who has had 23.5 sacks on the D-line combined in the last 4 years, as well as losing offensive tackle Orlando Brown Jr., who has held it down as a protector for Mahomes, but they ended up signing offensive tackle Jawan Taylor to fill up that offensive tackle spot, as well as drafting defensive end Felix Uzoma out of Kansas State, having 19.5 combined sacks in the last 2 seasons with KSU. The Chiefs also signed a very speedy receiver. So speedy, actually, he has the 40-yard dash record. Former UW receiver and former 9th overall pick, John Ross, got added to the roster, and honestly, I hope it works out there for him there, because if you watched his highlight tapes in college, you can see the potential he had and understand the hype that he had. And even in the league, when he was playing for the Cincinnati Bengals, he had some moments that he could have been that star receiver for them. With another opportunity, he could be a massive signing for Kansas City. Overall, the Chiefs are obviously going to be one, if not the top team in the AFC, and this might be a little bit of a stretch knowing that we haven't had a repeat champ since 2004 with the New England Patriots, but I would not be surprised at all if the Kansas City Chiefs would repeat a Super Bowl win this season. And I know I've been hyping this AFC division so much, saying there's probably 6 to 8 good teams, so why would I expect no one else to win except for the champs last season? Because they have Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, and Travis Kelce. And with that trio, they've made the AFC title game 5 straight years, ever since number 15 hit that field. With that being said, this division is a potential 3-headed monster if Russell Wilson decides to show up this season for Denver. It's going to be a high-scoring division with the potential that each offense has, but I don't think the order is going to be too different from 2022. Starting off with the Las Vegas Raiders, as I'll say, they'll have about 5 to 6 wins. Then let's ride, as in third place we have the Denver Broncos having 8 to 9 wins. Moving on to the Bolts, as the LA Chargers will finish in second place with 11 wins, leaving with the Kansas City Chiefs still being the reigning, defending AFC West champs. Alright, and that's going to conclude the AFC West for this video today. Thank you for watching. If you did enjoy, please hit the like and subscribe. Let me know down in the comments if you agree with me that the Kansas City Chiefs are going to repeat or not. Do you think I'm wrong? Let me know down in the comments. Anyways, hope y'all have a good one.